Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku activated a destiny rewrite system. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air on the rooftop was thin and tasted of burnt sugar and shattered dreams. Izuku Midoriya knelt on the gritty concrete, the sound of wind whistling past his ears the only thing louder than the roaring emptiness in his chest. His fingers, trembling and numb, traced the edge of his notebook. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. It felt less like a book of hope now and more like a gravestone. A very specific, very personal gravestone, singed at the edges and smelling faintly of sludge and sewage. All Might was gone. The skeletal form of the symbol of peace had descended the stairs, his words leaving deeper wounds than any physical blow ever could. Be realistic, the phrase echoed in the hollow space where Izuku's heart used to be. It was a simple, pragmatic statement. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't meant to injure. And that, somehow, made it so much worse. Bakugo's taunts were born of arrogant malice. He called Izuku Deku useless, a pebble on the side of the road. Izuku had learned to build walls against that kind of hate, flimsy though they were. But this was from All Might. This was from God. And God had looked down upon his most fervent, most devout worshipper and gently, kindly, told him that his prayers would never be answered. It's not bad to dream. But you have to be realistic. Izuku's gaze fell upon the open page of his notebook. The ink was smeared, the detailed drawing of Kamui Woods' ultimate move warped by dampness. But the signature was still there, bold and defiant. All Might's signature. He had been so ecstatic, so utterly starstruck just minutes ago. He'd gotten the autograph of his idol on the very day his life had fallen apart. The irony was a physical weight, pressing down on his lungs, making it hard to breathe. It felt like an epitaph scrawled on his own tomb. He closed the book with a quiet, final-sounding thump. This was it then. The end of the line. For 10 years, ever since that doctor's office, ever since his own mother had looked at him with tears in her eyes and uttered the soul-crushing words. "I'm sorry, Izuku." He had been running on nothing but pure, unadulterated hope. He'd convinced himself that having a quirk wasn't the only metric of heroism. A hero saved people. A hero inspired hope. A hero never gave up. He could do that. He had to do that. He'd been a fool. A hero also had to fight villains. A hero had to survive explosions, impacts, and blades. A hero needed a tool to do the job, and he had been born without one. All Might, the greatest of them all, had just confirmed it. Without a quirk, he wasn't just a liability, he was a potential casualty. A distraction? A victim waiting to happen. His legs felt like lead as he forced himself to stand. The wind tugged at his uniform, a cold, indifferent caress. He walked to the safety railing, his worn red sneakers scuffing against the ground. Below, the city of Muzurafu teemed with life. Cars flowed like blood cells through arteries, people milled about like ants, their lives full of purpose and potential, their bodies infused with the miracles of superpowers. From this height, he couldn't tell who had a quirk and who didn't. They were all just people. But he knew. He knew he was different, a glitch in the system. An empty file in a world of data. Maybe you could be a police officer. They get a lot of flack for being looked down on, but it's a fine profession. The memory of the words made him flinch. A police officer. It was a good job. An honorable job. But it was a concession. It was the universe telling him to settle, and Izuku Midoriya had never learned how to settle. His heart, his very soul, was calibrated for something grander, something brighter. To aim for the sun and miss was one thing, to be told you weren't even allowed to build the rocket was another. He turned away from the edge, his shoulders slumped in a posture of utter defeat. The walk down the stairs was an odyssey of misery. Each clank of his shoes on the metal steps was a nail being hammered into the coffin of his lifelong ambition. By the time he reached the ground floor and stepped back out into the alley, the sun was beginning to dip lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Colors that usually filled him with wonder, but today only seemed to mock him with their beauty. He started the walk home on autopilot. His feet knew the way, but his mind was a maelstrom of despair. The faces of his classmates flashed before his eyes, their jeers and condescending pity a familiar chorus. He saw Bakugo's sneering grin, palms crackling with miniature explosions. "You're worse than the rest of these damn rejects, you quirkless wannabe. You really think you can get into UA?" He saw his mother's worried expression, her unspoken fears a constant, suffocating presence in their small apartment. She supported him, but he knew she lived in terror of the day he would get truly hurt chasing his impossible dream. Maybe this was for the best. Maybe this was the wake-up call he needed to finally stop hurting her, to stop making a fool of himself. He could throw away his notebooks, take down his posters, and learn to be normal. The thought was so alien, so utterly devoid of color, that it made his stomach clench. A world without the striving, without the dream of being a hero, was that a world worth living in? Boom! The sound was a deep, concussive whump that vibrated through the soles of his shoes and up his spine. It was close. A plume of black smoke billowed into the evening sky a few streets over. A villain attack. For a single, glorious second, the old Izuku flared to life. His head snapped up, his eyes widened, and his legs twitched, ready to run towards the danger, notebook at the ready. It was instinct. It was ingrained. Then, the crushing weight of reality slammed back down. "What's the point?" A cold, new voice in his head whispered. "You can't do anything. You're just a spectator. Go home, Deku." He stayed put, his feet rooted to the pavement as the tide of panicked civilians began to flow away from the smoke. But something else, a morbid curiosity he couldn't deny, made him turn and slowly, hesitantly, drift towards the source of the commotion. He joined the back of a growing crowd, craning his neck to see past the barricade the police were hastily erecting. The scene was chaos. A familiar shopping arcade was ablaze, and in the center of it all was a monstrous, writhing mass of green sludge. The sludge villain, the very same one All Might had saved him from just an hour ago. He must have escaped when Izuku had foolishly latched onto All Might's leg. A wave of guilt, sharp and nauseating, washed over him. "This is my fault." The heroes on the scene were struggling. Kamui Woods was busy evacuating civilians from a collapsing storefront. The powerful Death Arms was trying to land a punch, but his fists just sank into the viscous body with a disgusting squelch, getting him stuck momentarily. Backdraft was trying to contain the fires, but his water quirk was having little effect on the villain itself. It was the worst possible combination of circumstances, a villain with a fluid body in a narrow, enclosed space, with fires spreading and a hostage. A hostage. Izuku's blood ran cold. The villain had someone. He could see a thrashing form within the green goo, small, contained explosions popping like firecrackers. The popping sound was sickeningly familiar. The spiky, ash-blonde hair was unmistakable. No. It couldn't be. It was Bakugo. Kaken. The crowd murmured around him. "That's the guy who got caught, right? He's got some powerful quirk. But the villain's just swallowing him up. Why aren't the heroes doing anything? They can't. They don't have the right quirks to handle this guy." Izuku's world narrowed to a single, horrifying point. He saw Bakugo's face, contorted not just with his usual rage, but with something Izuku had never seen there before. Pure, undiluted terror. His mouth was gasping for air, his eyes wide and pleading. He was suffocating. He was dying. And in that instant their eyes met. Through the chaos, through the smoke and the flames, Bakugo's desperate, terrified gaze locked onto Izuku's. In that look, Izuku saw 10 years of shared history. The childhood adventures, the shared admiration for All Might, the slow, corrosive divergence of their paths. The bullying, the cruelty, the casual malice. But underneath all of that, in this final, terrible moment, there was only one thing, a desperate, silent plea for help. And Izuku Midoriya, the quirkless, useless Deku, the boy who had just been told to give up, did the most illogical, irrational, and heroic thing he had ever done. He ran. He didn't think. He didn't plan. His legs, which had felt like stone moments before, were now a blur of motion. He burst through the police line, ignoring the shouts of the officers. The world dissolved into a tunnel of smoke and fire, with the struggling form of his childhood friend at its end. "I don't know what happened. My legs, they just started moving." It was a line he would say later, an honest confession of his own confusion. But as his feet pounded the pavement, something else happened. Something deep inside him, a core of compacted grief and despair and a single, unquenchable spark of heroic spirit, reached a critical pressure. It fractured. It shattered, and in its place, something new ignited. A high-frequency tone, impossibly sharp and clear, pierced the roar of the fire and the villain's gurgling laughter. It was a sound that wasn't a sound, resonating directly in his skull. The world stuttered for a fraction of a second, the image of the rampaging villain freezing like a corrupted video file. Then, a box of crisp, blue light bloomed into existence in his field of vision. It hovered there, translucent and utterly alien, overlaying the real world like a heads-up display from one of his video games. White, clinical text began to scroll across it. Destiny rewrite system activated. Scanning host. Complete. User, Izuka Midoriya. Designation, Vector. Izuka's running faltered for a half-step. His mind, already overloaded with adrenaline and terror, struggled to process the impossible sight. Was he hallucinating? Had the stress finally broken him? Analyzing current destiny thread. Quirk, none. Social status, outcast. Significance, negligible. Fated outcome, quirkless. Unremarkable. Fated for an early, forgotten death during a routine mugging in 3 years. The words were a physical blow. A brutal, objective confirmation of every dark fear he'd ever had about himself. Forgotten death. The finality of it, displayed in such cold, impersonal text, should have stopped him in his tracks. But he was still running. Bakugo was still dying. And then, a new line of text flashed, bright and urgent. New path detected. Act of selfless heroism initiated. Analyzing critical event. Critical event, childhood friend in peril. Probability of success with current parameters, 0.01%. Probability of user's death, 99.8%. He was going to die. The numbers didn't lie. He was just a quirkless kid running at an unbeatable monster. It was suicide. But the system wasn't finished. First boot sequence complete. Starter pack unlocked. A choice is presented. The first thread may be rewritten. Starter pack rewrite available. Grant Izuka Midoriya a basic quirk? Izuka's mind reeled. Grant a quirk? Was this a joke? A dying dream? He was 20 feet from the villain now, his yellow backpack clutched in his hands, ready to throw it as a pathetic distraction. He didn't have time for this. 3 options appeared below the prompt, each glowing with an enticing light. Options: 1. Basic telekinesis, mental manipulation of small to medium objects. Range: 10 meters. Cost: 100 destiny points. Applied starter discount, minus 100 DP. Final cost: 0 DP. 2. Minor pyrokinesis, generation of small, low-heat flames from hands. Cost: 100 destiny points. Applied starter discount, minus 100 DP. Final cost, 0 DP. 3. Decline, proceed with 0.01% probability of success. It was too much. His brain was short-circuiting. The smell of burning asphalt, the sound of Bakugo choking, the impossible blue screen, it was a sensory cacophony. He needed to do something. He needed to save Kaken. He needed power. He didn't consciously choose. There was no rational thought, no weighing of pros and cons. There was only a single, desperate, primal scream that echoed in the theater of his mind. Anything. Just give me something to save him. Telekinesis. The moment the intent formed, the first option flashed a brilliant white. Option 1, basic telekinesis selected. Cost 0 DP. Applying rewrite. A lance of pure, agonizing pain shot through Izuka's skull, originating from a point directly behind his eyes. It felt like a surgeon was instantly grafting a new bundle of nerves onto his brain. A wave of vertigo washed over him, so intense, he nearly fell. For a split second, the world seemed to warp, the physics of his own body feeling fundamentally wrong. He felt a new connection, a phantom limb extending not from his body, but from his will. A new sense, like sight or hearing, had just been brutally crammed into his consciousness. His arm was already in motion, swinging his yellow backpack. It was an act he had started before the rewrite. He had intended it to be a simple distraction, a flimsy piece of canvas and books thrown to maybe maybe by a second, but as the bag left his hand, he felt it. He felt its weight, its trajectory, its very existence in the space between him and the villain. And without thinking, his new, alien sense flexed. His mind screamed faster. Harder. The backpack, a flimsy thing that should have tumbled weakly through the air, did not tumble. It shot forward like a cannonball. The air cracked around it. It moved with a velocity that defied all logic, a yellow blur of unnatural force. And as it neared the villain's head, Izuku's panicked mind focused on a single detail: the notebooks inside. Hit the eye. In a second, impossible event, the zipper on the backpack burst open. His schoolbooks, including the singed hero analysis for the future, number 13, shot out of the bag. They didn't just spill, they launched. Each notebook became a separate projectile, hardened by an unseen force, spinning like discus blades. Thwack! 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 3 of the books struck the sludge villain's massive, gelatinous eye. The impact wasn't a soft splat. It was a series of hard, percussive cracks, like rocks being thrown at high speed. The villain let out a gurgling roar of shock and pain. Its liquid form recoiled, its grip on Bakugo loosening for a critical, life-altering second. Bakugo's head was freed, and he sucked in a desperate, ragged gasp of air. That single second was all it took. I really am pathetic. A familiar voice, deep and resonant, boomed from behind Izuku. A massive shadow fell over him. Even though I admonished you, I wasn't putting what I said into practice. All Might, his muscular form returned, stood there, a hand on Izuku's shoulder. His face was a mixture of shame and a terrifying, rekindled determination. A hero must always be ready to risk their life. The world seemed to hold its breath. Izuku, still on his knees from the momentum of his impossible throw, could only watch, his mind a blank static of pain and confusion. All Might drew his fist back. Detroit. Smash! The punch was a cataclysm. It struck the villain with the force of a meteor, but its true power was in the wind pressure it generated. A tornado erupted in the narrow street. The sludge villain wasn't just scattered, it was atomized, blasted into a million harmless green droplets that were instantly scattered by the gale. The resulting updraft was so powerful it seeded the clouds above, and a moment later, rain began to fall. The fires were extinguished. The villain was gone. Bakugo, coughing and covered in slime, lay gasping on the wet pavement. Silence. Then, the crowd erupted. Izuku didn't hear them. He was on his hands and knees, head spinning from the psychic whiplash. His backpack lay empty and torn nearby. The world was tilting on its axis. He had a quirk. He had a quirk? What had just happened? Later, after being thoroughly chewed out by the pro-heroes for his recklessness, there was absolutely no need for you to put yourself in danger, kid, and after Bakugo had stalked over to yell at him for not needing his help, I didn't need you to save me. I had it. You hear me, Deku? A different figure approached him as he began his walk home for the second time. I am here. Izuku flinched, spinning around to see All Might, steam rolling off his body, strike a pose at the street corner. The hero quickly deflated back into his skeletal form, coughing blood. He was here to talk. He was here to praise him. He was here to tell him the words that Izuku had yearned to hear his entire life. You, too, can become a hero. He was here to offer him his power, his sacred torch, one for all. It was everything he had ever wanted. It was the culmination of his dream. But as Izuku stood there, tears streaming down his face, a profound joy warring with a deep-seated terror, his attention was split. Because through the tears, through the rain, through the life-altering speech of the number one hero, the cool blue screen remained in his vision, unnoticed by anyone else. It had new text on it. Critical event successfully altered. 150 destiny points awarded for heroic action. 50 bonus DP awarded for unlocking new path. User, Izuku Midoriya. Destiny points, 200. All Might was still talking, explaining the nature of his quirk, but his words were being filtered through the lens of this impossible interface. Izuku looked from the smiling, hopeful face of his idol to the glowing box of text, and a tremor of fear, colder and deeper than anything he had felt before, ran through him. He had done it. He had saved Kaken. He had been acknowledged by All Might. But he hadn't done it alone. He had cheated. He had rewritten the script. And now, trembling in the rain, a godlike power humming in his skull and an alien system displaying its currency in his eyes, Izuku Midoriya had a terrifying realization. His story was no longer just his own. He had become an editor of reality. And he had no idea what the price of the first edit would be. The world had dissolved into a watercolor painting, colors bleeding into one another through the curtain of tears. Izuku couldn't stop from falling. All Might's voice cut through the haze, each word a sunbeam piercing the storm clouds of a decade's worth of doubt. You, too, can become a hero. The words landed with the force of a physical impact, knocking the air from his lungs. It was the benediction he had chased his entire life, the absolution for the sin of being born quirkless. He sobbed, a raw, ugly sound born of pure, overwhelming relief. His knees buckled, and he would have collapsed onto the wet asphalt if not for the spectral blue screen that seemed to hold his gaze, a rigid, geometric anchor in a sea of emotion. All Might continued, his voice softer now, imbued with the weary sincerity of Toshinori Yagi. I saw you out there, young man. You were quirkless, terrified, and you were the most heroic person on that street, while the pros, myself included, stood by and weighed the risks. You acted. You moved because your body understood the look on that other boy's face. Izuku's head swam. No, a frantic voice screamed inside him. That's not right. I acted because I had help. Didn't I? He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to banish the afterimage of the glowing text. He wanted this moment to be pure. He needed it to be. When he opened them again, the screen was still there, its clinical presence a chilling counterpoint to the raw humanity of the moment. New text scrolled, cool and analytical. Legacy event detected, one for all. This event is a cornerstone of the current Destiny thread. It involves the transference of a unique, stockpiling quirk passed down through generations. Accepting this power will drastically increase Destiny thread complexity and users' narrative significance. Risk assessment, high. Reward assessment, high. The system was dissecting his miracle, cataloging it like a specimen under a microscope. It felt profane. My quirk is not just some innate ability. All Might explained, completely unaware of the silent drama unfolding in Izuku's vision. It was passed on to me, a sacred torch handed from one person to the next. He gestured to himself, steam still faintly rising from his gaunt form. It is called one for all. One person cultivates the power, then passes it on to another. It is the crystallization of power, a quirk that stockpiles the strength of all its previous users. Izuku's breath hitched. A transferable quirk? A legacy of strength? It sounded like something straight out of a comic book. It was too good to be true. It was everything. I have been searching for a worthy successor, All Might said, his gaze intense, pinning Izuku in place. And then I saw you. You, a timid, quirkless boy, ran into danger to save another. Your spirit, your selfless heart, that is the foundation of a true hero. I have decided. You are worthy, young Midoriya. I want to offer you my power. The world stopped. The rain, the distant sirens, the buzzing in his own head, it all faded away. The only things left were All Might's outstretched hand and the silent, pulsing query on the screen in front of him. This was it. The crossroads of his entire existence. The dream he'd held on to through every jeer, every pitying look, every lonely night, was being offered to him. But the ghost in his vision wasn't done. A new, stark red warning flashed beneath the analysis. Warning, conflicting data signatures detected. System-granted quirk. Basic telekinesis is now a permanent alteration to users' biological and metaphysical framework. Inherited quirk. One for all carries the psychic vestiges and cumulative energy of 8 prior users. Merging a synthetic, reality-warping ability with a legacy-based spiritual quirk is an unknown variable. Unpredictable side effects may occur. Proceed with extreme caution. Izuku felt a faint, phantom sensation, like trying to mix oil and water in his very soul. On one hand, there was the new, sharp, and cold feeling of the telekinesis, a power that felt like a tool he was holding. On the other, there was the imagined warmth of All Might's offer, a power that felt like a hand reaching for his own. The system was warning him that putting them both in the same container could cause an explosion. He had a choice. He could rely on the strange, terrifying system that had given him a taste of power. It was quantifiable, logical. It offered rewrites and points. It was a cheat code, or he could accept this gift from his idol. A power built on sacrifice, trust, and the human spirit. A power he would have to earn even after receiving it. For the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya had two paths to power. One was a shortcut, the other a pilgrimage. He looked at Tashinori's thin, hopeful face. He saw the trust in his eyes, the belief that Izuku, just as he was worthy. That was something no system, no amount of destiny points, could ever give him. Yes. Izuku choked out, the word a ragged mix of a sob and a shout. Yes. I'll do it. A brilliant smile, the first genuine, non-hero smile Izuku had ever seen from him, split Tashinori's face. A quick answer. Just what I like to see. I knew I chose right. As the elation surged through him, a triumphant chime echoed in Izuku's mind, and the system flashed with a new notification. User has selected a canon-compliant, high-difficulty narrative path. Legacy Event 1 for all accepted. Destiny thread solidified. Reward for embracing a high-risk, high-reward choice and aligning with core narrative trajectory. 1,000 destiny points. Current DP, 1,200. The number was staggering. A moment ago, he had nothing. Now he had a fortune in this bizarre currency. The system hadn't just allowed his choice. It had rewarded it, as if he'd just followed its grand design all along. A cold shiver traced its way down his spine. The system didn't care how he became significant, only that he did. Meet me tomorrow at dawn. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. All Might instructed, giving him a slip of paper with his number. Your journey to becoming my successor, to inheriting One for All, begins now, and it's going to be hell. With a final, encouraging nod, the hero was gone, leaving Izuku alone in the rain, his world irrevocably and wonderfully shattered. He walked home in a daze, his mind a whirlwind. He clutched the slip of paper in his hand like a holy relic, while the system's cool blue interface remained a steadfast, silent passenger in his vision. He had All Might's dream in one hand, and a devil's bargain in the other. Sleep was an impossibility. Izuku lay in his bed, the familiar All Might posters on his walls seeming to watch him with a newfound weight of expectation. His body thrummed with a nervous energy that was part excitement, part pure terror. He had reread All Might's note 100 times. He had pinched himself twice as many. This was real, but so was the system. He closed his eyes and focused. For the past few hours, he had been trying to interact with it, to understand what it was. It seemed to respond to his mental focus. Menu, he thought tentatively. The screen flickered and changed, displaying a list of options. Status, rewrites, destiny viewing locked, log, tutorial/help. His eyes latched onto the last option. Tutorial, he commanded. A wall of text appeared, and Izuku, a boy who devoured information like it was air, began to read with feverish intensity. The tutorial was written in the same cold, clinical tone. It explained the core concepts, laying out the rules of the impossible game he was now a player in. Destiny points, DP, the core currency for influencing reality. DP is generated through actions that significantly alter, defy, or reinforce major threads of fate. Earning methods include enduring extreme physical or emotional hardship, suffering yields strength protocol, making choices with canonically significant consequences, or actively defying a pre-written fate. Bonus DP may be awarded for refusing low-effort rewrites in favor of more difficult, character-building paths. Izuku's blood ran cold. Suffering yields strength? The system was literally designed to reward him for his pain. His entire life of being bullied, of being an outcast, was that some kind of prerequisite? The thought was sickening. Rewrites, the primary function of the system, allows the user to expend DP to enact localized changes in reality. Rewrites are categorized by their impact scale. Minor rewrites, 1 to 200 DP. Small, personal alterations. Enhancing physical attributes, slightly altering object properties. Minor probability manipulation, e.g., causing someone to trip. Low risk of cosmic backlash. Major rewrites, 201 to 10,000 DP. Significant event alterations. Preventing accidents, granting or suppressing quirks, altering personal histories. High risk of unforeseen consequences, cataclysmic rewrites, 10,000 dp reality-breaking changes. Erasing individuals from the timeline, altering foundational laws of physics. Extreme risk of paradoxical cascade. Use not advised without complete understanding of destiny mechanics. He shuddered at the term paradoxical cascade. It sounded apocalyptic. The butterfly effect, destiny's inertia, the fundamental law of rewriting. Reality is a complex, interwoven tapestry. Pulling a single thread, a rewrite, can cause the entire pattern to unravel in unpredictable ways. The butterfly effect. Furthermore, destiny itself possesses a form of inertia. It resists change. Minor edits can cause ripples, small, unforeseen consequences. Major edits can be met with fate corrections, where reality violently reasserts the original outcome, often in a more tragic or forceful manner. The greater the change, the more reality will fight back. So, if he used a major rewrite to, say, stop a car crash, reality might just cause a bridge to collapse later to correct for the lives he saved. It wasn't a power to be used lightly. It was cosmic surgery with a rusty scalpel. Finally, he looked at his own status page. Status: User, Izuka Midoriya, age 14, Quirks, 1, System granted basic telekinesis, dormant, 2, Inherited 1 for all, transfer 1% complete incompatible host vessel, Destiny points, 1200, Destiny corruption, 0.5%, incompatible host vessel. The words leaped out at him. All Might had said his body needed to be prepared, that it would explode if he wasn't strong enough. But this felt different. More fundamental. It was the oil and water problem the system had warned him about. And then there was the last line. Destiny corruption, 0.5%. He focused on it, and a small tooltip appeared. Destiny corruption, a measure of the cumulative deviation from the user's original, baseline reality. Higher percentages may lead to increased timeline instability and existential degradation. He wasn't sure what existential degradation meant, but it sounded terrifying. That 0.5% was the cost of saving Kaken. A price tag on his first act of heroism. He felt a profound sense of guilt, a sickness in his stomach. His dream was coming true, but it was already tainted, marked by a stain only he could see. The next 10 months were a blur of sweat, agony, and carefully curated lies. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was less a park and more a monument to illegal dumping. It was a mountain range of forgotten appliances, rusted car parts, and generations of trash, all assaulted by the salty sea air. "This is your gym," All Might declared, his emaciated form looking comically small against a backdrop of discarded refrigerators. "You need to build a proper vessel for my power. If you don't, your limbs will pop right off when you try to use it. So, you're going to clean this entire section of the beach." He produced a meticulously detailed workout and diet plan, the aim to pass, American Dream Plan. It was insane. The caloric intake alone was enough to feed a family, and the workout regimen was designed for an Olympic athlete. The first few weeks were pure, unadulterated hell. Izuka's body, soft and unused to real labor, screamed in protest. Every muscle ached. He'd haul a single rusted washing machine a few feet and collapse, lungs burning. He'd go home, force down a mountain of rice and fish until his stomach cramped, and pass out, only to wake up before dawn, every fiber of his being protesting. And all the while, the system watched. It was a silent observer, a constant temptation. 3 weeks in, he was trying to move a massive, waterlogged freezer. His grip was slipping, his back was screaming, and his vision was starting to tunnel. He was going to drop it. He was going to fail. A prompt appeared, shimmering in his vision. User is approaching physical limit. Risk of spinal injury, 43%. Minor rewrite suggested. Temporarily increase user's muscle fiber recruitment by 20% for 30 seconds. Cost, 15 dp, 15 points. It was nothing. He had 1200. It was a drop in the ocean. He could do it. He could lift this freezer, impress All Might, and avoid getting hurt. It was the logical choice. No, he told himself, gritting his teeth. I have to do this myself. I have to be worthy. He strained, groaning, and managed to heave the freezer another inch before his muscles gave out completely. He stumbled back, the freezer crashing to the sand. He hadn't lifted it, but he hadn't broken his back either. A soft chime pinged in his head. User has refused a low-effort rewrite in favor of a character-building path of hardship. 25 bonus DP awarded. The system was rewarding his refusal. It was a twisted form of positive reinforcement. It was telling him, good job suffering. Here's a cookie. But the temptation was a persistent shadow. A month later, he was struggling with the diet. His stomach felt like a lead balloon. He was constantly nauseous. Minor rewrite. Increase metabolic efficiency by 30% for 12 hours. Cost, 20 DP. He was so tired. He just wanted the discomfort to stop. With a surge of guilt, he mentally accepted. There was no flash of light, no surge of power. Just a slow, creeping warmth in his gut. The nausea subsided. He was able to finish his meal without feeling like he was going to be sick. It was glorious. And he hated himself for it. That was the first domino. It became easier after that. Not frequent, but tactical. A small rewrite here to prevent a muscle tear. A few destiny points there to enhance his stamina for the morning run, allowing him to go an extra half mile. He'd use a rewrite to slightly improve his grip strength when hauling ropes, or to increase his nutrient absorption from his food. Each time, he felt a pang of guilt, and each time, he justified it. This isn't making me stronger, he'd rationalize. It's just letting me train harder. It's optimization. It's safer. I'm still doing the work. But he knew deep down that it was a lie. All Might was oblivious and ecstatic. Young Midoriya, your progress is astounding. He boomed one afternoon, watching as Izuku, now lean and corded with muscle, deadlifted a small engine block. Your determination is like nothing I've ever seen. You're not just following the plan, you're demolishing it. You were born for this. Each word of praise was a knife in Izuku's gut. All Might was praising a fiction, a hero sculpted by cosmic loopholes. He would smile and thank his mentor, his heart feeling like a lead weight. The destiny corruption meter, which he checked obsessively every night, had been slowly, almost imperceptibly, ticking up. Destiny corruption, 0.6%. Destiny corruption, 0.7%. Destiny corruption, 0.8%. He couldn't feel a difference. The world didn't seem any less stable. But the rising number was a constant, low-level hum of anxiety in the back of his mind. It was the price he was paying, a debt accruing in a currency he didn't understand. The most profound change was to his own body. He wasn't just getting stronger, he was becoming efficient. The rewrites, designed to help him survive All Might's training, were subtly altering his biology. He recovered from workouts with a speed that defied explanation. His body processed calories with the ruthless efficiency of a furnace. He was becoming the perfect vessel, but he felt like a prototype built from stolen parts. One evening, about 8 months into the training, he was experimenting. He had avoided touching the telekinesis, afraid of what it represented. But curiosity was a powerful force. Sitting on a clean patch of sand, he focused on a small seashell a few feet away. Activate quirk, basic telekinesis? He confirmed. The familiar, sharp pain behind his eyes returned, milder this time. He felt that phantom limb of his will reach out. He focused on the seashell, thinking, lift. The shell trembled, then rose a few inches into the air, wobbling unsteadily. It took an immense amount of concentration, a mental effort that made his head pound. He managed to move it a foot to the left before his focus broke, and it clattered back to the sand. It was real. It was his. And it felt completely alien compared to the burgeoning power of One for All he could now feel simmering deep within him, a dormant volcano waiting for the signal to erupt. The telekinesis was a cold, precise tool. Orphe was a roaring bonfire of life and energy. The system's warning about unpredictable side effects echoed in his memory. The final morning came, just as the sun was painting the horizon. The beach was pristine. The mountains of trash were gone, replaced by a vast, clean expanse of sand that met the sparkling water. It was beautiful. Izuku stood atop the last pile of compacted metal, screaming his triumph to the heavens. All Might, in his muscular form, stood below, looking up with an expression of profound pride. He took out his phone to show Izuku the picture of him from 10 months ago, a scrawny, tear-streaked boy. Then he took a new picture of the figure before him now, a young man, lean, powerful, and forged in hardship. Incredible, All Might breathed, his voice thick with emotion. You did it, my boy. You did it perfectly. Izuku scrambled down from the pile, his heart threatening to beat out of his chest. This moment, at least, was real. The sweat was real. The calluses on his hands were real. The ache in his bones was real. Maybe it was enough. Now, All Might said, a single strand of his blonde hair catching the morning light. For your reward. He plucked the hair from his head. Eat this. Izuku's brain screeched to a halt. Huh! After a comical and deeply confusing explanation that he had to ingest his mentor's DNA to inherit the quirk, Izuku, with a sense of profound absurdity, took the strand of hair. He looked at it, lying in his palm. The key to his entire future. The culmination of 10 months of agony and 10 years of hope. He closed his eyes and swallowed it. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, a tidal wave of energy crashed through him. It was unlike anything he had ever felt. It wasn't the cold, sharp prick of the system. It was a supernova of warmth, strength, and presence. It felt like 1,000 voices screaming go. In unison. It was the combined will of 8 heroes, a legacy of hope and power, pouring into him. And then it met the cold, hard foreign object of the system's telekinesis quirk, lodged in his soul like a shard of glass. The pain was blinding. Legacy Event 1 for all transfer initiated. Detecting catastrophic incompatibility between host framework and inherited power signature. System granted quirk basic telekinesis is conflicting with 1 for all vestige field. Initiating emergency synthesis protocol. Izuku screamed, collapsing to his knees. It felt like his very essence was being torn in two. Green lightning, the telltale sign of 1 for all's power, erupted from his body, crackling violently. But woven within the green, almost too fast to see, were thin, sharp threads of cobalt blue. The energies were fighting, a war being waged in the arena of his soul. Young Midoriya! What's wrong? All Might yelled, kneeling beside him, his face a mask of panic. Izuku couldn't answer. He could feel the raw power of OFA trying to fill him, and he could feel the system fighting back, trying to contain and analyze this new, chaotic variable. It wasn't just oil and water, it was fire and ice, a battle for dominance within him. The system's interface flickered wildly, lines of code scrolling too fast to read. Then, it stabilized, a new message burning on the screen. Emergency synthesis complete. 1 for all is being forcibly integrated. A new equilibrium has been established. Side effects are still unknown. Destiny corruption, 1.2%. The pain subsided, leaving him shaking and gasping on the clean sand. The green lightning faded, but he could still feel it, a roaring ocean just beneath his skin, and beside it, the cold, quiet hum of the system. They weren't fighting anymore. They had merged, creating something new. Something unstable. He looked up at his worried mentor, his vision blurry. I'm okay, he lied, his voice raspy. It's just, a lot. All Might let out a breath of relief. Of course, my boy. Of course. It's the power of generations. But you did it. It's yours now. Izuku pushed himself to his feet, his legs trembling. He had done it. He was ready for the UA entrance exam. He was the successor to All Might, the 9th user of 1 for all. But as he looked out at the rising sun, he felt a profound and terrifying dread. He was no longer just the inheritor of a sacred torch. He was a walking paradox, a vessel containing both a legacy of heroes and a parasitic, reality-altering code. He had paid a price for his dream, not just in sweat and blood, but in pieces of his own reality, and the interest on his debt was continuing to grow. His journey to becoming a hero had truly begun, but he was starting it as something not entirely human. The gates of UA High School were monolithic, a testament to the grand dream they guarded. They were larger and more imposing in person than in any photo or news broadcast. To Izuku Midoriya, they were the gates of heaven, and he was a pilgrim who had crawled through 10 months of hell just to stand before them. He clutched the strap of his gym bag, the clean fabric a stark contrast to the worn-out yellow backpack he had retired after the sludge villain incident. That bag was a relic of a different lifetime, a symbol of the powerless boy he used to be. He was different now. His body was a tightly coiled spring, lean muscle layered over a frame that had once been defined by its weakness. He could feel the power of one for all humming deep within him, a dormant, star-hot furnace waiting for the right fuel. It felt warm, alive, a chorus of heroic wills whispering encouragement in the back of his soul. And beneath that warmth, a colder, more alien presence lingered. The system. It was quiescent for the moment, its blue interface faded to a barely there transparency in the corner of his eye. But he knew it was there, watching, analyzing, waiting. He had made a vow to himself this morning, a promise whispered in the reflection of his bedroom mirror. Today, he would not use it. Not once. He would pass this test with the power All Might had gifted him, with the strength his own body had earned. He had to prove, if only to himself, that he was more than a vector for some cosmic program. He was Izuku Midoriya, and he was going to be a hero on his own terms. Out of my way, Deku! The familiar, gravelly bark cut through his reverie. Katsuki Bakugo shoved past him, not even bothering to look back. He radiated an aura of explosive confidence, his every step a declaration of his inevitable victory. Izuku flinched, curling into himself out of pure instinct, a reaction honed over 10 years of bullying. But as Bakugo stormed ahead, Izuku straightened his shoulders. The dynamic had changed. He wasn't the same pebble on the side of the road anymore. He had power now. Two kinds, in fact. As he took a determined step forward, his foot caught on an uneven paving stone. The world tilted violently. Of course, he thought with a surge of familiar mortification, all this power and I still can't even walk properly. He flailed, his arms pinwheeling as he pitched forward, destined for a face-first meeting with the ground. But the impact never came. He hung suspended, a strange lightness in his chest. A gentle hand had tapped his back. "Whoa there! Are you okay?" a bright, cheerful voice asked. He righted himself, turning to see a girl with rosy cheeks and a warm, genuine smile. Her brown hair was cut in a cute bob, and her eyes sparkled with concern. "It'd be a bad omen to trip right before we start, huh? Man, I'm so nervous. Aren't you?" Izuku's brain went into total system failure. A girl. A cute girl was talking to him. Willingly. He devolved into a stuttering, blushing mess of flailing hands and incoherent noises. She just giggled, a sound like tiny bells, before waving and heading towards the entrance. "Well, good luck in there." He watched her go, his heart pounding for an entirely different reason. The system, silent until now, offered a piece of unwelcome analysis. New significant NPC encountered, Ochako Uraraka. Quirk, zero gravity. Narrative role, ally primary support. Shut up, Izuku thought fiercely, a spike of irritation piercing his all. Don't you dare label her. She's a person. He took a deep breath, forcing the system's interference down. He had a test to pass. The orientation was a blur of noise and light, lorded over by the voice hero, Present Mike. His booming explanation of the exam rules, a 10-minute mock battle and a massive urban cityscape against 3 types of robots worth 1, 2, or 3 points, barely registered over the frantic thumping of Izuku's heart. He stared at the printout, his eyes scanning the silhouettes of the villain bots. He had to do this. He had to make All Might proud. Then, a tall, stern-looking boy with glasses shot to his feet, chopping the air with a rigid hand. He called out Izuku for his incessant muttering and then pointed a finger at the printout. "And you, sir, there is a 4th type of villain pictured here. If this is a misprint, it is a gross failing for a prestigious institution like UA. And if it is not, then it is an even greater failing that you have neglected to explain it to us." Present Mike, ever the showman, grinned. All right, examinee 7111. Thanks for the call-in. The 4th villain type is a 0-pointer. It's an arena trap, an obstacle to be avoided. It's worth no points, so there's no reason to fight it. Just run, an obstacle. Izuku's gaze lingered on the massive, shadowy silhouette. It looked less like a robot and more like a skyscraper with legs. A profound sense of unease settled in his stomach. The bus ride to Battle Center B was silent and tense. Izuku was surrounded by kids bristling with confidence, their quirks practically leaking from their pores. A boy cracked his knuckles, which turned to solid stone. A girl stretched her neck like rubber to see out the window. He was in a sea of power, and while he now had the biggest fish of all, he had absolutely no idea how to swim. The battle center was staggering. It was a full-scale replica of a city district, complete with multi-story buildings, paved roads, and complex alleyways. It was a hero's playground, and a novice's nightmare. Gah! President Mick's voice screamed from unseen speakers, startling everyone. What are you waiting for? The test has started. There are no countdowns in a real villain fight. The realization hit the crowd like a physical blow. Everyone surged forward, a tidal wave of ambitious teenagers flooding the fake city. Izuku was left in the dust, his mind still catching up. He shook himself and sprinted after them, his heart hammering against his ribs. Okay. Calm down. One for all. All Might said to clench my buttocks and yell smash from the bottom of my heart. He saw his first target. A one-point robot, a sleek green machine on a single wheel, rolled around a corner. This was it. His chance. He took a deep breath, focused on that roaring furnace inside him, and drew his arm back. Clench. And smash. He thought it. He felt the intent. But nothing happened. The power remained dormant, a locked door he didn't have the key for. The robot's red eye locked onto him, and it charged, a small cannon extending from its chassis. Izuku yelped and scrambled away, his grand debut turning into a clumsy retreat. The next few minutes were a humiliating montage of failure. He would see a robot, try to summon one for all, and get nothing. The power was too vast, too overwhelming. It was like trying to drink from a fire hose. His body, though strong, was terrified of the sheer scale of it. He could feel it resisting, his instincts screaming that if he let that power out, it would destroy him. Other examinees were racking up points with practiced ease. The boy with engines in his legs, the one who'd yelled at him, zipped past, kicking a three-pointer's head off in a blur of motion. A blonde boy with a belt that shot a laser blasted a group of one-pointers to scrap. Izuku had 0 points. The system, which had been respectfully silent, began to stir, its prompts growing more insistent, like a devil on his shoulder. User is performing significantly below optimal parameters. Minor rewrites suggested. Highlight structural weak points on all visible robot targets. Cost 5 DP. No, Izuku gritted his teeth, dodging another robot's attack. He scrambled up a fire escape, panting. Time elapsed, 6 minutes. Points acquired 0. Probability of passing, 12.4% and dropping. Minor rewrite suggested. Temporarily short-circuit the targeting system of the examinee below to claim their target. Cost, 10 DP. The suggestion was so venal, so fundamentally unheroic, that it jolted him. Never! He whispered aloud, horrified that the system would even propose such a thing. He had to do this himself. He had to. He saw a cluster of two-pointers cornering another student. This was his chance. He leaped from the fire escape, aiming a kick. Come on, come on, come on! Just a little bit. He focused on just his leg, trying to channel a tiny fraction of the power. For a second, he felt it. A surge of warmth, a crackle of green energy. But it was too much, too fast. His entire leg lit up with incandescent power, and his mind recoiled in sheer panic before the circuit could complete. He landed awkwardly, his kick just a normal, human kick that bounced harmlessly off the robot's metal chassis. He tumbled to the ground, scraping his hands. 0 points. The other student, who had what looked like a tail, dispatched the robots with a series of powerful swipes and ran off, not even sparing Izuku a glance. Despair was a cold, heavy blanket. He was failing. After everything, after all the training, all the hope, he was going to fail. All Might's belief in him felt like a cruel joke. What good was having the world's greatest power if you were too afraid to even turn it on? 2 minutes left. The panic was a physical thing now, clawing at his throat. He was going to let everyone down. His mom. All Might. Himself. Then, the ground began to shake. It wasn't a subtle tremor. It was a deep, rhythmic, earth-shattering boom. Boom. Boom, that sent dust and pebbles dancing on the street. A collective gasp rose from the examinees scattered throughout the city. From between two towering skyscrapers it emerged. The zero-pointer. It was impossibly huge. Its massive, tank-treaded body was the size of a city block, and its upper torso rose a dozen stories into the air, its flat, menacing head scraping against the lower clouds. A single, enormous red eye glowed with malevolent purpose. It was less a robot and more a walking catastrophe, a god of destruction made of steel and wires. Panic erupted. It's the zero-pointer! Run! Just run away! It's not worth any points! Get out of here! Everyone did just that. A mad scramble of teenagers fled from the mechanical behemoth, their earlier confidence replaced by primal fear. Izuku, frozen in place by sheer awe and terror, was swept up in the tide. Run, his brain screamed. It's just an obstacle. He was running when he heard a cry of pain. He skidded to a halt, turning back towards the danger. And he saw her, the kind girl with the rosy cheeks. Ochako Uraraka. She was on the ground, her leg pinned beneath a huge slab of concrete, rubble from a building the zero-pointer had clipped with its massive arm. She was struggling, her face pale with pain and fear, as the giant robot continued its inexorable advance towards her. In that moment, everything else ceased to exist. The points, the exam, his own failure, it all vanished. There was only the girl, the monster, and the certainty of what would happen if no one did anything. His legs started moving. He wasn't running away this time. He was running towards the zero-pointer. Towards the girl. The old instinct, the one that had sent him hurtling towards the sludge villain, had taken over once again. But this time, he wasn't quirkless. He had a roaring sun inside him. As he sprinted, his mind finally achieving a state of perfect, selfless clarity, the system flashed a final, critical warning. Analyzing user intent. Engage zero-point target to save Ochako Uraraka. Calculating probability of success with 1 for all full-body activation. Probability of target neutralization, 34%. Probability of crippling injury to user, 98%. Probability of death via impact trauma from fall, 76%. The numbers were horrifying, a clinical death sentence. But he didn't care. He had to save her. A more efficient path is available. User has sufficient DP. Suggested rewrite. Temporarily reinforce user's bone structure with hyperdense carbon lattice. Duration 10 seconds. Cost 200 DP. This rewrite will allow full use of 1 for all with a 75% reduction in physical repercussion. The temptation was immense. It was a life or death situation. It was the logical choice. Survival. Efficiency. Victory without sacrifice. All for just 200 points. He could save her and save himself. He could be the hero and walk away unscathed. His mind hovered over the mental accept button. The blue light of the prompt seemed to pulse, promising him an easy way out. But then, he thought of the 10 months of agony on that beach. He thought of the weight of the refrigerators, the sting of the salt air, the burn in his muscles. He thought of All Might's proud smile, the praise for his determination. All Might hadn't offered his power to a boy who took shortcuts. He had offered it to a boy who ran into danger despite his powerlessness. To use the system now would be a betrayal of all of it. Of All Might. Of the 8 users before him. Of the very idea of what a hero was supposed to be. A hero didn't save people because it was easy. A hero saved people because it was the right thing to do, no matter the cost. No, he screamed in his mind, a final, definitive act of defiance against the cold logic of the machine in his head. I will do this myself. He rejected the rewrite. And then he jumped. He pushed off the ground with all the strength his legs could muster, soaring into the air. He flew past the 3rd story, the 4th, the 5th, a green and black missile of pure heroic will. And this time, when he reached for 1 for all, the door didn't just unlock. It was blown off its hinges. The power came in a singular, cataclysmic wave. It surged from the core of his being, down his right arm, filling every cell with cosmic force. His sleeve disintegrated. His skin glowed, intricate red lines appearing like cracks in a dam about to burst. It was agony and ecstasy, the power of a god contained in the fragile shell of a boy. He was level with the zero-pointer's head now. It turned its massive cyclopean eye towards him, a gnat to be swatted. Izuku Midoriya, the boy who was told he couldn't be a hero, drew back his fist and yelled the name of his dream to the heavens. Smayawash! The impact was apocalyptic. His small fist met the robot's faceplate, and for a fraction of a second, the world was silent. Then, a shockwave erupted. The robot's head crumpled inward like tinfoil. A concussive boom echoed across the entire cityscape, shattering every window for blocks. The zero-pointer's colossal body shuddered, its systems fried. It froze in place, then began to tilt backward, its one red eye flickering and dying. Izuku hung in the air for a moment, suspended at the apex of his jump, a god in mortal form. He had done it. He had saved her. Then gravity remembered him. The pain hit him all at once. He looked down at his right arm. It was a mangled, purple ruin, swollen and bent at impossible angles, utterly shattered. He screamed. Then he looked at his legs. They were just as bad, broken and useless from the force of his jump. The system's prediction had been right. 98% probability of crippling injury. He began to fall. The ground rushed up to meet him. He was a stone, helpless and broken, plummeting 10 stories to a certain, messy death. The system flashed another warning. Probability of death, 76%. This was it. He had saved someone, but he had failed to save himself. He was going to die. His panicked eyes found Uraraka. She was still on the ground, looking up at him, her face a mask of horror. She was safe from the robot, but as it fell backward, its death throes were dislodging pieces of its own chassis. Izuku saw it then. A large, jagged piece of the robot's head armor, about the size of a car door, had been blasted upwards by his punch. Now it was falling, spinning end over end, on a direct collision course with the very spot where Uraraka lay trapped. She was staring up at him, so she didn't see the new danger plummeting towards her. He had saved her from the robot, only for his own power to doom her. He was out of power. His limbs were broken. He couldn't move. He couldn't shout. There was nothing he could do. No, panic, pure and absolute, overrode every other thought. His vow, his determination to do it himself, it all evaporated in the face of this immediate, horrific consequence. He couldn't let her die, not because of him. He had one tool left. One last, desperate resort? System. He screamed in his mind, his focus narrowing to a single, desperate point. The debris. Move it! Now! He didn't even look at the cost. He just threw his will at the problem, fueled by the only currency he had left. Critical event rewrite initiated. Target, zero-pointer debris fragment 07A. Action, alter trajectory by 15 degrees westward. Cost, 150 DP. Confirmed. As the points were spent, Izuku felt a strange, wrenching sensation, as if a thread in the fabric of the universe had been violently yanked. The falling piece of metal, which had been obeying the simple, clean laws of physics, suddenly twitched. In midair, its spin changed. It veered sideways with an unnatural, jarring motion, as if nudged by an invisible hand. It missed Uraraka by a good 20 feet. Relief, so potent it was dizzying, flooded Izuku. He had done it. He had. Crunch. The sound was sickening. A grinding, screaming protest of concrete and steel. The piece of debris, its trajectory altered, didn't just land harmlessly in the street. It slammed point first into the facade of a 5-story office building adjacent to the road. The impact was devastating. A spiderweb of cracks erupted from the point of collision. The reinforced concrete, not designed for such a specific, high-velocity impact, gave way. With a deep, groaning roar, a huge section of the building's wall, 2 stories high and 20 feet wide, sheared off and began to fall. And directly below, huddled against the base of that very building for cover, were 2 other examinees. Izuku's blood ran cold. The relief turned to ash in his mouth. He had traded one disaster for another. Before the slab of concrete could crush the terrified students, the ground swelled upwards. A wave of solid cement, fluid and fast, rose like a pillar, catching the falling wall with a deafening crack. More pillars rose, creating a massive, cradle-like structure that shored up the damaged building and secured the falling debris. Present Mick's voice, stripped of its usual bombast and laced with genuine alarm, boomed over the speakers. Cementos! To the west sector! We have a structural collapse! Izuku, still falling, saw the pro-hero Cementos already on the scene, his hands pressed to the ground, his face grim as he manipulated the concrete to prevent a catastrophe. He had saved the other students. The butterfly effect. A small edit. A ripple. He had saved Uraraka, but his fix had almost killed 2 other people and caused massive collateral damage, forcing a pro-hero to intervene. Then, a sharp slap to his cheek. His descent slowed, then stopped. He hung in the air, a few feet from the ground, feeling weightless. Uraraka was there, her hand pressed against his chest, her face green. She had pushed herself up and slapped him to activate her quirk before collapsing from the effort. The buzzer sounded, signaling the end of the exam. Izuku lay on the broken pavement, his body a symphony of agony, his mind a silent scream of guilt. He had passed the test of heroism, but he had failed the test of consequence. The next thing he knew, he was in a pristine white room, the antiseptic smell of disinfectant filling his nose. An elderly woman with a large syringe for a hairstyle was leaning over him, planting a soft, wet kiss on his forehead. My, what did you do to yourself, dearie? Recovery girl, the youthful heroine tooted. To break 3 limbs and get this much backlash from your own quirk on your first day, you boys and your reckless power. Her quirk flooded his system, a gentle, warm energy that jump-started his body's natural healing process. The fractured bones began to knit, the torn muscles to mend. It was a process that left him feeling utterly exhausted, but the sharp agony receded to a dull, throbbing ache. He lay there, letting the healing wash over him, when Recovery Girl paused. She placed her hand on his forehead, her brow furrowed in concentration. That's odd, she murmured, more to herself than to him. What is? Izuku asked, his voice hoarse. Your quirk. One for all, Tashinori told me. A powerful, straightforward stockpiling ability, she said, her eyes narrowed. But your biosignature, it's not clean. It's unstable. Izuku's heart froze. It's like there are 2 different energy patterns inside you, fighting for dominance, she continued, her clinical tone doing nothing to soothe his rising panic. One is this vast, warm, vital energy, one for all, I presume. But there's another one. A colder, sharper frequency. It's artificial, almost. It's creating a terrible dissonance in your life force, like 2 notes played right next to each other. I've never felt anything quite like it. It's a miracle you can even function, let alone use a power like that without completely coming apart at the seams. She looked at him, her gaze sharp and questioning. Are you sure there's nothing else you should be telling us, Sonny? Another aspect to your quirk, perhaps? Izuku could only shake his head, his throat too tight to form words. He was a walking paradox, and the world's greatest healer had just put her finger directly on the fault line. He was discharged a few hours later, his body healed but his spirit deeply wounded. He checked his system as he walked through the now empty halls of UA, his DP balance updated. He had earned points for the 0-pointer takedown. But the other number was the one that held his attention. Destiny Corruption, 2%. It had jumped a full 0.8% from the training, and another 0.7% from that single, desperate rewrite. The price was accelerating. He had gotten into UA. He had 0 villain points, but the rescue points from saving Uraraka had secured his place. It was a victory, but as he walked out through the massive gates, he didn't feel like a victor. He felt like a fraud who had just discovered his cheat code had a virus, one that was slowly but surely corrupting the entire game, and he was the only one who had to play. The UA high school uniform was a paradox. It was a simple, impeccably tailored gray blazer, green accented trousers, and a red tie. Yet it felt heavier than any piece of scrap metal he had ever hauled from the sands of Dagoba Beach. Each thread seemed woven with the weight of 100 years of heroism, a legacy of giants whose hallowed halls he now walked. To his classmates, it was a symbol of achievement, the first step on the road to greatness. To Izuku, it felt like a costume, a disguise for the fraud hiding underneath. He sat in Class 1A, the room buzzing with the electric confidence of the nation's best and brightest. There was the engine-legged boy from the exam, Tenya Ida, already moving with the rigid formality of a class president. There was the pretty, bubbly girl, Ochako Uraraka, who had saved him from his own power, and whose warm smiles sent a jolt through him every time she looked his way. And there, 2 rows ahead, was the unmoving, explosive thundercloud that was Katsuki Bakugo, his feet kicked up on the desk in a blatant show of disregard for the rules he clearly felt didn't apply to him. Then, a yellow caterpillar rolled into the room. The man who unzipped himself from the sleeping bag was Shota Aizawa, a hero Izuku recognized only from obscure forums, the underground erasure hero, Eraserhead. His face was a mask of perpetual exhaustion, his eyes bloodshot and heavy-lidded, yet they swept across the class with a predatory intensity that silenced the room instantly. "It took you 8 seconds to quiet down." Aizawa's monotone voice scraped the air. "That's not going to work. Time is a precious resource. You're not here to make friends." With that cheery introduction, he tossed a bundle of gym uniforms onto his desk. "Put these on and meet me on the field. We're having a quirk apprehension test." The collective confusion was palpable. "But what about the entrance ceremony? Or the orientation?" Uraraka asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. "If you're going to be a hero, you don't have time for pointless ceremonies," Aizawa stated flatly, his gaze making it clear this was not a debate. "UA is not a normal school. I have free reign over how I run my class. You think this is unfair? Too bad. Natural disasters, villain attacks. They don't play fair either." The words sent a chill down Izuku's spine. He felt the cold, analytical presence of the system stir in the back of his mind, its transparent blue interface sharpening slightly in the corner of his vision. It was like a dormant predator that had caught the scent of blood. The scent of conflict. On the field, under the harsh glare of the sun, Aizawa's threat became terrifyingly real. "You've been taking standardized tests without using your quirks your whole lives. Today, we gauge your potential with them. The student who ranks last in total points will be judged to have no potential, and will be expelled." Immediately, panic. Pure, unadulterated panic ripped through the class. Izuku felt his blood run cold. Expelled? On the first day? After everything? He had passed the entrance exam by the skin of his teeth, with 0 villain points. He had no practical, controllable way to use one for all. Without his quirk, he was just a physically fit but otherwise average boy. He would be last. He would be expelled. All Might's dream, his mother's pride, his entire future, it would all turn to dust. The first test was the 50-meter dash. Ida, with his leg engines, finished in just over 3 seconds. Bakugo propelled himself with explosions in 4. Izuku was up against the girl with a frog-like quirk. As he got into the starting blocks, a prompt shimmered into view, tempting and insidious. User is at a significant disadvantage. Low performance will increase probability of expulsion to 87%. Minor rewrite suggested. Temporarily increase fast twitch muscle fiber efficiency in legs by 40%. Cost 30 DP. It was so easy. A small cost for a guaranteed boost. No one would know. He would just be faster. He could survive this first test. No. The word was a shield in his mind. I won't. He had to try. He had to believe in his own body, the body he had spent 10 months building. He ran with everything he had, his lungs burning, his legs pumping. He finished in 7.02 seconds. Dead last. The whispers started immediately. 7.02? Seriously? That's like a normal middle schooler. What even is his quirk? Aizawa's bored, disappointed gaze felt like a physical weight. The next tests were more of the same. The grip strength test, where a boy with multiple arms scored over 540 kilograms, Izuku barely managed 56 kilograms. The standing long jump, he cleared the sandbox, but only just. With each failure, the system's prompts became more frequent, more logical. Increased tendon durability for seated toe touch. Cost 5 DP. Alter air density for side steps. Cost 10 DP. He refused them all. Each denial was an act of faith, but with every poor result, his faith wavered. He could feel the cold dread of expulsion coiling in his stomach. He was going to fail. Then came the final test, the ball throw. Aizawa tossed him a softball. Midoriya, you got the highest score on the practical exam, yet your performance here has been abysmal. What are you planning to do? Break your bones again and have someone else clean up your mess? The words hit their mark. Aizawa knew. He had seen the entrance exam footage. He saw Izuku as a liability, a one-trick pony whose trick destroyed him. You can't be a hero if you're a constant burden. Aizawa's voice was dangerously quiet. Let's see what you can do when you're cornered. Izuku stood in the circle, the ball feeling like a lead weight in his palm. This was it. His last chance? He couldn't afford another zero. He had to use one for all, but if he used it like he did against the zero-pointer, he'd shatter his arm and be useless for the rest of the day, proving Aizawa right. The system offered its most tempting solution yet. A single, powerful demonstration is required. A full power smash is too destructive to the user. Minor rewrite suggested. Alter the localized gravity field around the softball by 0.5% at the apex of its arc. This will add significant distance with minimal physical output from the user. Cost 40 DP. It was brilliant. A subtle, powerful cheat that would look like a demonstration of incredible control. No broken bones. An amazing score. Survival. He squeezed his eyes shut. What would All Might do? All Might wouldn't cheat. He would face the challenge head-on. He had told Izuku. It's like an egg in a microwave. You have to learn to control the heat, or it will explode. Control. Not avoidance. Izuku took a deep breath. He ignored the shimmering blue text. He thought back to the 10 months of agony, the feeling of power building. He couldn't let it flood his whole arm. It was too much. But maybe just a tiny bit. A single drop from the ocean. He drew his arm back, focusing all his will, all his desperation, on one single point. The very tip of his index finger. He poured the roaring inferno of one for all not into his fist, not into his arm, but into that one, tiny point of contact. Not the whole egg, he thought, a frantic prayer. Just the yolk. He threw the ball. As it left his hand, he released the power. A shockwave of force erupted from his fingertip. A cannon blast of wind kicked up a cloud of dust. The ball became a comet, screaming into the sky with a sonic boom, leaving a trail of displaced air in its wake. The pain was excruciating, but localized. A blinding, sharp agony shot through his finger. He looked down. It was swollen, purple, and clearly broken. But it was just his finger. The rest of his arm was fine. He was still standing. He was still in the fight. He turned to Aizawa, a pained, triumphant grin on his face. I can still move. Aizawa's eyes were wide. The machine in his hand beeped, displaying the distance. He held it up. 705.3 meters. Just a meter more than Bakugo. For the first time, a slow, predatory grin spread across Aizawa's face. It was terrifying. Heh! This kid! A low growl came from the crowd. Bakugo stared, his hands starting to smoke, his face a mask of incandescent rage. How had Deku, the worthless, quirkless pebble, done that? Izuku had survived. He had found a way. His way. And as he clutched his broken finger, he felt a surge of pride that was entirely his own. The system pinged, but it wasn't a suggestion. User has demonstrated rudimentary control over one for all through extreme desperation and willpower. User has refused multiple tactical rewrites in a high-stakes scenario. Reward for adherence to character building path. 150 bonus DP. He had earned points by not using the system. The irony was not lost on him. The battle trial was All Might's domain. The symbol of peace, in his full, muscular glory, announced the exercise, an indoor, 2-on-2 battle. Heroes versus villains. The heroes had to touch a nuclear weapon prop or capture the villains. The villains had to protect the weapon or capture the heroes. Izuku's heart pounded as he looked at his new hero costume. It was a green jumpsuit with a red belt and a headpiece with long ears, designed to emulate All Might's signature hair tufts. It was a little embarrassing, but it was his. A tribute to his idol. Then came the drawing of lots. Team A, Izuku Midoriya and Ochako Uraraka. His heart did a little flip. Team D, Tenya Ida and Katsuki Bakugo. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Izuku was pitted against the boy who had tormented him his entire life. And Bakugo's expression was murderous. This wasn't an exercise for him. This was a hunt. As they waited for the trial to begin, Izuku and Uraraka formulated a plan. He explained his theory about Bakugo. He was arrogant, proud, and would almost certainly abandon his post to come straight for Izuku. It was personal. So you're saying he's a jerk? Uraraka summarized. He's just incredibly driven, Izuku said, a diplomatic understatement. The system, however, was not so diplomatic. It had been running a constant, silent analysis, and now it began to flood his vision with data. Opponent profile, Katsuki Bakugo. Quirk, explosion. Combat style, hyper-aggressive, overwhelming offense. Predictable opening move, right hook propelled by a small blast for momentum. Psychological profile, extreme superiority complex coupled with a deep-seated inferiority complex regarding user. Highly volatile. Easily goaded into irrational actions. Asset analysis, grenadier bracers. Function, store nitroglycerin like sweat for a single, massive, shaped charge. Current sweat level, 45%. The stream of information was a tactical goldmine. It was also terrifyingly intimate, like reading Bakugo's very soul. Izuku tried to push it away, to focus on his own plan. Heroes, you may enter the building. All Might's voice boomed. They crept inside. Just as Izuku predicted, Bakugo ambushed them, launching himself around a corner with a roar of fury. An explosion tore through the hallway, the heat searing. Izuku tackled Uraraka, pulling them both out of the way just in time. The fight was a blur of chaos. Bakugo was relentless, a force of nature. His explosions were not just attacks. They were his movement, his defense, his entire world. Izuku, using his wits and the capture tape All Might had given them, managed to hold his own, but he was purely on the defensive. He was analyzing, gauging, waiting for an opening. He managed to use the tape in a brilliant move, capturing Bakugo's leg after predicting his high kick. Bakugo was furious, caught off guard. He was about to retaliate when Izuku saw his chance. Uraraka, go! She took off, running for the bomb and Ida, leaving Izuku to face the monster alone. You've been tricking me all this time, haven't you, you damn nerd? Bakugo snarled, ripping the tape off his leg. He stalked towards Izuku, his eyes glowing with a terrifying light. That fancy quirk of yours. You've had it for years, haven't you? Laughing at me behind my back. Looking down on me, that's not it, Kaken, I swear. Izuku pleaded, backing away. I only just got it. It's not even. I can't even control it. Lies. Bakugo roared. He raised his right arm, aiming the huge, grenade-shaped gauntlet directly at Izuku. You know what these do, Deku? They store my sweat. And now, it's full. All Might's voice crackled in their earpieces, panicked. Young Bakugo, don't. You'll kill him. He'll be fine if he dodges. Bakugo yelled back, his thumb hovering over the trigger pin. Izuku's blood ran cold. This wasn't an exercise anymore. Bakugo was going to fire. He was trapped in a narrow corridor. There was nowhere to dodge. He was going to take the full force of a military-grade explosion, and the system, sensing his absolute, mortal terror, made its move. Critical danger detected. User survival probability, 3%. A subtle, low-cost solution is available. Suggested rewrite. Weaken structural integrity of Katsuki Bakugo's gauntlet firing pin by 80%. Cost 50 DP. Effect. The pin will snap harmlessly when pulled. The gauntlet will fail to fire. The temptation was overwhelming. It was perfect. It wouldn't hurt Bakugo. It would just disarm him. It was a smart, tactical move. A hero's job is to de-escalate, isn't it? What better way than to make the weapon simply not work? It would save his life, and he wouldn't even have to break another bone. Just 50 points. A tiny price for survival. His finger twitched, his mind screaming yes. Do it! But as he looked at Bakugo's face, twisted with a rage born from a decade of perceived superiority being challenged for the first time, he understood. If he used the system now, if he won through a trick, a cheat, a lie, he would prove Bakugo right. He would confirm in Bakugo's mind, and more importantly, in his own, that he was nothing without a gimmick, that he couldn't stand on his own. The path of a hero wasn't the path of least resistance. It was the path of righteousness, no matter how much it hurt. With a surge of defiant terror, he rejected the rewrite. He braced himself, crossing his arms in a desperate, futile block. Bakugo pulled the pin. Die! The world became fire and sound. An immense, concentrated blast erupted from the gauntlet, tearing through the hallway like a dragon's breath. The heat was unimaginable, the force like being hit by a freight train. The explosion blew out the entire side of the building. Izuku was thrown back like a rag doll, his costume shredded, his skin seared. The pain was immense, a full-body agony that left him gasping and deafened. But he was alive. Bakugo, true to his word, had aimed it slightly off-center. It was an attack meant to intimidate and incapacitate, not kill. Though the line was terrifyingly thin, he staggered to his feet, his body screaming, his ears ringing. He had taken Bakugo's ultimate move and he was still standing. The look on Bakugo's face was one of pure, unadulterated shock. The fight ended moments later in a desperate, brilliant gambit. Izuku, knowing he couldn't win a direct fight, forced the confrontation. He activated One for All in his arm, aiming not at Bakugo, but at the ceiling. The resulting smash sent a massive shockwave upwards, demolishing the floors above them. Uraraka, using her quirk to make herself weightless and a pillar as a baseball bat, used the falling debris as a weapon, distracting Ida long enough for her to grab the weapon. The heroes won. Izuku collapsed, his left arm burned and bruised, his right arm shattered from the recoil of his desperate smash. He had won, but he had broken himself again. Later, as he was being healed by Recovery Girl for the second time in as many days, the system chimed. It was different this time. A deeper, more significant tone. User has demonstrated exceptional adherence to a high-difficulty narrative path by refusing a decisive tactical advantage in favor of enduring extreme personal harm. This act of will, choosing principle over survival, has caused a significant divergence from baseline probabilistic outcomes. User's spiritual framework has stabilized sufficiently to handle higher-tier system functions. 200 bonus DP awarded. Current DP, 1750. New feature unlocked, Destiny Viewing, Tier 1. A new option appeared on his main menu. Hesitantly, Izuku focused on it. Destiny Viewing allows user to witness fragmented, incorporeal echoes of the original, unaltered Destiny thread. These are not predictions, but recordings of a reality that no longer exists due to the system's intervention. Viewing may cause mental and emotional distress. He activated it. The world around him faded to gray. The air grew cold. For a moment, he saw an image, flickering like a bad hologram. It was himself, standing in the UA entrance exam. He saw himself break not one arm, but both legs as well. The image was raw, painful, and deeply familiar. It was a ghost of his own past, or rather, the past that should have been. The system was showing him the history he had erased. The vision faded, leaving him with a profound sense of unease. He had a window into a world without his cheat code, a world where his consequences were even more severe. What else had he changed? He wouldn't have to wait long to find out. The next day in class, Aizawa announced they would be doing rescue training at a remote facility, the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ. There was a buzz of excitement. They would be working with All Might and one other hero to learn how to operate in different disaster scenarios. It was what they had all been waiting for. But for Izuku, a cold dread was blooming in his chest. It was a gut feeling, a primal sense of wrongness that he couldn't shake. That night sleep wouldn't come. He tossed and turned, the name of the facility echoing in his mind. Unforeseen Simulation Joint. It sounded ominous. He sat up in bed, the moonlight casting long shadows across his room. He needed to know. He focused his will and activated Destiny Viewing again, but this time, he pushed. He didn't just want to see a memory, he wanted to see what was supposed to happen next. The effect was instantaneous and violent. The world didn't fade to gray. It was ripped away. He was plunged into an abyss of cold, sensory deprivation. Then, images, sounds, and feelings crashed over him in a horrifying torrent. He saw the USJ Plaza. A swirling, purple-black mist coalesced near the central fountain. From it, dozens of villains poured out, a tide of malice and chaos. And leading them was a man whose entire body seemed to be covered in dismembered hands, his posture hunched, his presence radiating pure decay. He felt the panic of his classmates as they were scattered by the mist villain, warped to different zones of the facility. Then, he saw Aizawa. He saw his teacher, a whirlwind of action, his capture weapon a blur, his erasure quirk flickering from villain to villain, taking them down with brutal efficiency. He was a one-man army, a true underground hero. And then he saw the Noma. It was a nightmare given form. A hulking, bird-faced behemoth with an exposed brain, its muscles bulging unnaturally. It moved with a speed and strength that defied its size. It caught Aizawa. The vision became terrifyingly clear, a high-definition recording of a murder. He felt the phantom pain as the Noma slammed Aizawa's face into the concrete. Crunch. He heard the sickening snap of bone as it twisted his arm behind his back. Then the hand-faced man, Shigaraki Tamura, drifted forward, a manic glee in his eyes. He reached out and placed his hand on Aizawa's elbow. Izuku didn't just see it, he felt it, a horrifying, crawling sensation of decomposition. He watched, helpless, as his teacher's flesh and bone turned to dust, his elbow flaking away into nothingness, leaving the lower half of his arm hanging by shredded tendons. Aizawa's scream of pure, unadulterated agony was the last thing he heard before the vision shattered, throwing him back into his bedroom. He was on the floor, gasping for air, his body drenched in cold sweat. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He scrambled for the trash can, retching, though nothing came up. It was real. That was what was supposed to happen. That was the original script. His horror was so profound, so absolute, that it was a beacon. The system responded instantly, its blue screen flaring to life with an almost predatory brightness. It understood his terror, and it had a solution. Catastrophic future event detected, USJ infiltration. Probability of multiple student casualties, 65%. Probability of fatality, Shota Aizawa 88%. Probability of failure for symbol of peace, 45%. The numbers confirmed his terror. Then, a new prompt appeared, larger and more significant than any before it. It glowed with a powerful, world-altering light. Major event rewrite available. Action: prevent the League of Villains attack on the USJ. This can be achieved by creating a minor catastrophe, e.g., a multi-car pileup on the highway leading to UA, blocking the villains' access and alerting authorities. Cost: 10,000 destiny points. 10,000. The number was breathtaking. He looked at his own balance. 1750. It was an impossible sum. He couldn't afford it even if he wanted to. He was powerless. But then, a final line of text appeared beneath the cost, a warning written in stark, blood-red letters. Warning: initiating this rewrite carries a high risk of paradoxical cascade. Destiny's inertia will attempt to correct. The League of Villains' frustrated malice may be redirected to a more vulnerable, unprotected civilian target, e.g., a nearby elementary school or shopping mall. Izuku stared at the warning, his blood turning to ice. He finally understood. This power wasn't a gift. It was a curse. A monkey's paw of cosmic proportions. He couldn't just erase the problem. If he did, the problem would simply reappear somewhere else, possibly in an even more horrific form. He could save Aizawa and his friends, but in doing so, he might be signing the death warrants for 100 innocent strangers. The weight of that choice, the sheer moral horror of it, was crushing. He was trapped. He couldn't afford the rewrite, and even if he could, the potential consequences were too monstrous to contemplate. He couldn't stop the storm from coming. He sat there, trembling in the dark, the horrifying images from his vision burned into his mind. He couldn't use a sledgehammer to demolish the problem. It was too blunt, too dangerous. A new resolve, born of sheer, desperate terror, began to form in his heart. If he couldn't stop the storm, he would have to learn how to redirect the lightning. He couldn't be a god, erasing events from existence. He had to be a surgeon, making small, precise incisions to change the outcome. He looked at his DP balance. 1750. It wasn't enough to stop the attack. But maybe, just maybe, it was enough to save a life.